Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Priyanka and on this channel I talk everything about moving from India to Australia as a student, settling down here with your permanent residency, mixed with lots of real life tips that I share from my own experience and how you can actually live a happy, sustainable and a healthy life here in Australia. So, by the title you already know, this video is about how you can actually speed up your process of residency here in Australia and how you can actually land your permanent residency within the first 5 years of coming to Australia as a student. So, first of all, let's just talk about who this video is for. If you're someone who's currently studying in one of the universities in Australia and you've just started your course and you already want to prepare yourself and get ahead of everyone with your permanent residency process, this video is for you. Or if you're someone who's currently planning from India or any other country to come to Australia, study, and then settle here, this video is for you. This video is not for you if you're someone who's already spent 5 to 6 years in Australia and you're now figuring out how to get your permanent residency. I will be sharing in this video how I actually prepared myself from the very first day of landing in Australia and how you can do the same. Or if you're someone who's, studied for a year now and you want to start thinking about future, definitely this video will be very helpful for you. Let's get right into it. Imagine waking up with a knot in your stomach every morning, thinking whether you'll get your permanent residency or not. Will you be forced to leave everything behind that you've built here, or you'll actually get to settle in this country that you've been calling your home for the past 4 years? The constant stress of wondering whether you'll be able to settle in this country or not, where you have actually been living for the past 5 years and you've kind of built your life here. It's actually a feeling that I can't really explain, and you won't get it until you've actually lived it. And that was my reality for the past 5 years. And not just mine, hundreds and thousands of international students that come here face this. Whether you will get the reward that you actually want, which is settling down at the end, or all the sacrifices that you've done in these last years will go into vain. So, and sacrifices like you are staying away from your family, you're missing all the festivals, you're missing everyone's birthdays, and just the feeling that all your family is miles away from you. Those sacrifices. And when I finally got my PR this year, the relief was out of this world. I can't even explain that feeling. And it wasn't just about, oh wow, now I'm an Australian resident. It was more about being able to freely plan my future without restrictions, to apply for jobs without worrying about the visa limitation, and to know that I wouldn't have to do all of this all over again. To be honest, it was a moment of freedom and empowerment that I've never felt before. So, how did I make it happen? What are some of the most important things that I took care of from the very first week of landing in Australia, and how can you apply those? Just a few days ago, I was just sitting and thinking about how did I actually land my permanent residency? What all led me here and why did I get it so quickly? This is when I decided to start writing my script for this video, and I have all the points written down. And I feel like students who are currently studying, if you're in your first year or your second year, you should start applying these things already in your life, because I feel that these were some of the game changers for me. So, I came to Australia from India to pursue my master's in business analytics, and there have been days when I used to be up until 3 a.m., 4 a.m. after coming back from my part time job, sitting and completing the assignment that needs to be submitted the next day. To be honest, the first year was very tough mentally as well as financially. And on top of this, the looming uncertainty of your visa conditions and your visa status, that whether I will ever land my permanent residency in this country or not. And it was like a shadow following me everywhere. There were moments when I questioned that are these sacrifices even worth it? Staying away from your family, missing all the events, missing all the amazing festivals that we have in India. And that's when I decided that no matter how hard things get, I need to get my permanent residency before 2025, because I just felt that I'm making so many sacrifices. I definitely want these to reap some benefit later in future. So let's talk about the steps that I took that helped me secure my permanent residency. Also, I would like to mention that these are not the kind of tips that you get on a checklist. These are some of the things that come from real hard earned lessons about my own experience. So, number one, choosing the right consultancy, but also doing your own research. So this step comes from my experience about choosing a few different consultancies whom I wasn't happy with, and it I realized that it is such an important thing which we literally don't think as much about. The first crucial step was finding the right consultancy for me. I knew from the very beginning that no one is going to do the same amount of research that I will do for myself. And I couldn't just hand over everything to the consultant and just sit and wait for a miracle to happen. I remember I chose a consultancy and even paid them initial amount, but I realized that after paying them, the communication wasn't great, and I realized that our vibe wasn't matching. So I decided to stop going ahead with them and then looked for another consultant. And this time I actually went into the market and spoke to a few and saw what I felt, spoke to them, felt the vibe, and that's how I chose the consultant for myself. So at the end, I would just say don't rely on your agent. Make sure that you are doing your own research. Go on to Reddit, go on to Facebook groups, even LinkedIn. Just try to talk to as many people as you can to understand what visa they applied, how did they actually get their visa. So don't rely fully on the agents. Tip number 2 would be taking more risks. I feel that if I look back on my journey until now, I've actually taken a lot of random risks in life, and everything taught me something and took me one step closer to where I am today or where I wanted to go. Now, when I look back at my journey, I took so many risks, and taking those risks actually took me closer to my destination, which was getting a permanent residency. I think the biggest risk, which I've already talked a lot about in my videos, was moving from Melbourne to Canberra. And why I feel this was a huge risk was because I had already built my connections, my people, my life basically in Melbourne after moving from India. And now I was uprooting myself from Melbourne to Canberra. And although I knew one friend here in Canberra before moving, but it wasn't entirely easy. I was still starting afresh. I was still building my connections from, again. And I still remember there was a time when I moved to Canberra and it was my first week in Canberra. And I was like, Priyanka, what have you done? You've left all your friends back in Melbourne. You've left all your friends back in Delhi, and you're starting again now. But it turned out great for me. I got my permanent residency in Canberra. I got my job as a business analyst in Canberra. So I feel that if you're not seeing the results that you want, you need to take risks. Whether it's moving to a different city, upskilling yourself, or simply taking some personal risks, just take them, but make sure they're calculated. Tip number 3 is practicing some fitness and mindfulness in your routine. Why I'm saying this is important is because fitness actually helps you clear your mind, and when your mind is clear, you are more focused on taking steps towards what is actually important. This might sound like, how can walking help me get my permanent residency? But let me explain. When I was constantly stressed about studying, part-time jobs, and thinking about future for my permanent residency, I used to get stressed, and then I used to not eat proper food, not think about my body, not think about my mind, and that way I would indulge in things that are not really helpful to me. I would just doom scroll on my phone, I would just keep scrolling through social media. And when you are scrolling too much on your social media, it is a sign you are stressed. And that stress can only be relieved by practicing mindfulness and walking into the nature, going out, taking care of your body, taking care of your mind is what actually helps you to think and plan about future. So what I used to do was I used to walk to my restaurant. It was like a 1 hour walk, and if I would take tram, it would just take me 5 minutes. But I used to deliberately choose to walk for that 45 minutes till I reach my restaurant, because that would clear up my mind. I would listen to a podcast, or I would sometimes not even listen to anything and just observe. And I used to feel that after coming back from the restaurant, I still used to have some energy left because of adding that physical activity in my life and in my daily routine. So make sure that while you are juggling with everything and thinking about future, also start taking care about your mental health and your physical health, because that will actually prepare you to think more about your future and permanent residency and take the right decisions ultimately. You just need to find ways to incorporate fitness and mindfulness into your routine, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. Walking is enough. walking has actually proven to, remove stress from life. So it's all about finding that space to breathe and clear up your mind and prepare for future. Point number 4, which also might sound very overrated, but I think it's very underrated: building great connections with your existing employers at part-time jobs. I can't even tell you how many times I have reached out to the employers at my part-time jobs for references. Reference to get a house. I'm not sure whether you know this, but even when you have to rent a house or an apartment in Australia, you need references for that. It could be your old landlord or someone from your part-time job, mostly your owner of the part-time job. So building great connections with your employers is very, very important, because that will help you as a reference in everything: reference to apply part-time jobs, reference to apply for a house, reference to even apply for your visa application. Yes, sometimes you have to give references for your visa applications as well, and they have to be personal or employers. So I would say make sure that from the very first week, after you feel that, this is it, this is the good part time job, and you're going to do this for a very long time, start making good connections with them. Show them how reliable you are. I still remember that, how I was working in that Italian restaurant. My manager noticed how reliable I was and how efficient I was at my work. And I also stayed late to help with any tasks. And when it came to asking for a reference letter for my PR, it was an easy breeze for me, because he knew me personally now. He knew how reliable I am, and he was more than happy to give a reference for me. So, at the end, don't underestimate the power of building great relationships at work. You don't know when you could use one of them. And as I've always talked about the, power of networking, even if it's a part-time job, I would say go beyond just showing up, demonstrate your work ethics, your reliability, your effectiveness, your enthusiasm, and how you're actually not there just for money, but also to build great relationships. Point number 5 is very, very important. Start building your savings and always have funds saved up for rainy days. Earning in dollars for the first time can actually be very thrilling. I am the live example of it. And it's very easy to get swept away with, earning and spending on yourself, because you become independent for the first time and you feel like, okay, I'm earning, I'll be paid next week, and then next week again, how about I just spend on myself a bit? But I would say during your student time, you can actually save up a lot if you are spending mindfully. Building savings is very important, and I know this from my experience, because when I was moving from Melbourne to Canberra, I actually needed a lot of savings, because I wasn't going to start my job from, the very next week. There were a few weeks in between when I wouldn't be working, and then I needed money to travel here as well. I needed money to deposit for an apartment that I was going to live in. So when you move cities and you randomly take such risks, you need to be prepared, and those are the rainy days that I'm talking about. So if you're going to go through PR process in future, start saving early. I think PR also somewhere costs around $7,000 to $8,000, and that's a lot. I also had to do my professional year to get my PR here in Canberra, and I'm thinking I'll actually make a detailed video on step-by-step process of how to apply for your PR 190 visa. But for now, as I said, this is just a realistic, hard-earned lessons video, so let's keep going. But yes, make sure that you have savings for that rainy day. It's very important. Make sure that you have a financial budget for yourself. I think you can use like an Excel sheet to calculate your budgets every month and see where you're spending, where you are overspending, and just make sure that you are at the top of your financials. You know what's going on in your bank account. What I do for this is I check my Commonwealth Bank app every morning. I see what's direct debiting, where did I spend the most, and accordingly plan my day. Point number 6 would be staying informed and being proactive at your research. Again, this might sound a bit overrated, and I would say it's very underrated. People do not do their own research, and you need to do your own due diligence. Staying on top of my research was probably one of the most crucial skills that I had realized. I have things in my hand. I'm not giving the reins in someone else's hand, and I always wanted to be at the top of my game. Always wanted to make sure that what visa am I applying for? What are the documents I need? Can I provide extra documents? I remember I used to constantly scroll through immigration forums and Facebook groups, basically trying to understand from every point of view that how can I actually increase my points and increase my probability of getting my permanent residency as soon as possible. So I would say that make a habit to stay informed, stay more informed about, use forums, use government websites, use everything that you think is possible, talking to other people, and just being more open to what information is out there about your particular visa. The more you know, the better you can navigate your options. Point number 8 would be taking the right action when it is required. So, remember how I moved from Melbourne to Canberra, and it was a very quick decision. I know I've already covered that in taking risks, but taking that right action is also very important. I feel that after spending 1.5 years on student visa, the anxiety and the panic started to kick in that what am I gonna do? And that is when I had already started thinking about maybe I might have to move to regional area. And that's when I decided that okay, as soon as I finish my studies, I will look for a job for the next 6 months. If I get a job in my own field as a business analyst, cool, I will not move. But after 6 months of completing my studies, if I don't find a job, I will move to a regional area. And I started shortlisting some regional areas. Then, thankfully, one of my friend moved to Canberra, and I talked to her, and she said, yes, Canberra is one of the greatest options for permanent residency. You should move right now. And I took that action within 2 weeks. It was the quickest action I've ever taken, and it was a huge risk, as I've already spoken. But I took that action when I realized it is now required. So, and this is just one of the examples. I'm just trying to tell you here that do not sit too much on a risk or on a on a decision that you've thought that you want to take, because I would say that if you're facing a tight timeline and you're not seeing progress at where you are, just take the step. Don't wait for the right moment. Take action, whether it's moving to a new city or changing that job or pursuing a different pathway, or even maybe changing your course that you initially came from. If you feel that that is the right step for you, just take it and don't sit on it too much. Making bold moves when the stakes are high can actually change the entire course of your journey. So take that action. So these were the 8 most important things that actually helped me land my permanent residency here in Australia. And it wasn't easy, obviously. There were sleepless nights, there were risks that I took, there were crying nights. I used to cry a lot, and it just used to make me feel whether all these sacrifices would be worth it or not. But by choosing the right consultancy, staying fit, making sure that I'm informed, making sure that I'm taking care of my mental health as well as physical health, and I'm taking the right action when it's required, the process wasn't as bad and the reward was worth it. If you found this video helpful, hit that like button. And if you're someone who's currently planning to come to Australia and need to prepare yourself a bit, you can watch this video here, and I will catch you in the next one.